it's quite exceptional that Australia, actually comparatively very late in the game, has been hit by these kind of significant cyber incidents. Obviously, the Optus and Medibank data breaches come first to mind. I think what it triggered overall was, I think, with a bit of a delay compared to what you've seen in other jurisdictions and other places in the world, a recognition and awareness that cybersecurity is an issue that affects people. I think Minister O'Neill gave a very, moving statement in Parliament House, where she said how it would affect kind of particular women when kind of their medical data was breached. But I think it also finally, after a bit of a standstill for many years, kind of incentivized a new cybersecurity strategy, which is currently under development, of course, but also looking at other methods to address cybersecurity risks. So part of that being regulation, but also how do we kind of strengthen the resilience of the whole ecosystem in Australia. So at ASPI, we're working obviously on a range of topics. So we are an independent think tank looking kind of at the strategic issues that Australia and Australia's leaders face this year and over the next few years. So in terms of cybersecurity, we're looking kind of at the big factors that affect Australia's national security, Australia's economic security. So looking kind of at what are the threat actors. I think earlier today, some speakers referred to kind of the major four, and we talk, let's say, about how China is behaving in the cyber domain, how the Russian state is sponsoring cyber operations, malicious cyber operations, but also what Iran and North Korea are doing. That's kind of a bit of a kind of an elite group of bad actors. There is another kind of whole variety of states that simply have cybersecurity issues. One of the displays here shows this nice kind of threat map where they kind of have to have live tracking of incidents occurring. And there's also a list of the 4 jurisdictions most affected, most targeted. And in that list are Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and I think a 4th one, which I can't remember. And that is interesting because it's not so that kind of Indonesia is kind of having a major kind of malicious cyber campaign targeting Australia or the US or Europe. But it's kind of a reflection of poor cybersecurity at home, which is both putting those countries kind of at risk of being attacked, but also it kind of shows that they do not have the capabilities, in most cases, of making sure that their territory is not misused by criminals, by individuals, or by organized criminals. And that's something that we try to look at. How do you build capacity? How do you empower, for instance, the national cybersecurity centers or national cybersecurity authorities? How do you develop a good, effective, and resourced national cybersecurity strategy or plan? And what do you need to do internationally to strengthen collaboration between law enforcement, between the intelligence and national cybersecurity agencies, and between different policymakers? So one of the projects that I'm working on at the moment, and which I talked about today, is a project to help emerging economies stand up against the threat of what's called cyber-enabled theft of intellectual property. So that is foreign states trying to steal trade secrets, sensitive business information, or assets of innovation or economic data to commercialize locally, so to take an unfair advantage to local companies. So that project is obviously driven by what the major powers in the world can agree on and what they're willing to collaborate on. This is based on a G20 agreement dating back to 2015. So the G20, the 20 biggest economies in the world, which includes US, Australia, but also Russia, China, Brazil, India. So what can they do as a collective to make sure that other states adhere to that agreement? But also, what can we do domestically here in Australia, but for our project even more so in emerging economies, to strengthen cybersecurity resilience? Not so much of government, not so much of critical infrastructure, but of those entities which are what you could call kind of the soft targets. So medium enterprises, universities, research labs, startups, those entities that are innovative, produce intellectual property, that will be fundamental to kind of economic prosperity in 5 to 10 years from now. Yeah, I think collaboration is kind of the key word that pops up anywhere, whether that's, let's say, between kind of those providing cybersecurity services to individual companies, whether that's at the kind of the sectoral level where you have information sharing, let's say, between all those operating kind of in the what do you call it, the electricity environment, or in the water supply, or in the banking system. So that they know kind of what are the different threat actors, what are the different tools they deploy, so that everyone can kind of strengthen their systems. But it's also true for at the national level, where, and I think the Australian government has been trying for a long time to foster collaboration between government, say the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and industries and kind of the private cybersecurity firms. And do threat intelligence sharing and try to respond collaboratively to an incident, rather than everyone doing its own thing, or some entities being left in the dark about certain things. But it also applies to international collaboration, as I talked about before. It's for all of this, it's important that there are kind of streams of communication, that if there is kind of a major incident affecting Australia today, and it seems to be coming from, let's say, Singapore, that someone can literally pick up the phone and ask, hey, what's happening? What do you see happening? Is it something you can stop? Is it something you know where it's coming from? Is it coming indeed from Singaporean territory? Is it coming from somewhere else? So it's all about collaboration. It's all about exchange of information, about threat intelligence. But also when it comes to protecting, you similarly need everyone to kind of do their bit, because you and I are users of systems. The systems are owned by a whole variety of private entities. And then we have various governments, even in our part of the world, who have very different organizational setups, different levels of maturity, different levels of talking about cybersecurity. Yeah, I think events like these, I think, are super informative and interesting and useful for practitioners in industry and in government. I think for networking, being able that human contact, or personal contact, is super important. But also get an update on kind of what's happening in different sectors, whether that's again within industry or within government. What are the priorities? What are the concerns? And try to look for common solutions. My main takeaway, I think, from an event like this is always that you always kind of operate in your own bubble, right? So at ASPI, obviously, we're looking oftentimes and mostly kind of at big picture strategic developments. But the things you hear here is kind of what's keeping operators, service providers awake every day at night, today. But kind of what can be really operational technical issues that they're concerned about or that they're working on. So that's kind of that enrichment of the debate is super helpful.